All right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we got a brand new episode on a pretty new movie. Obviously, with everything going on, quarantine and all that, we're a little mixed up in our schedule, where we just started that special series, the Missing Pieces series on older movies, and we're still going to try to cover some newer movies, and we're just going to be kind of all over the place for a little while. But this is a movie that just came out a couple weeks ago on VOD after doing some very infamous film festival screenings. It is Glenn Danzig's Verotika. This is a completely nuts movie. It was fun to watch, let's put it that way. Would have been more fun with a crowd, I think, rather than alone on my couch with my dog and cats. But I still had some good laughs during it, and I had a great time talking about it with our first-time guest co-host, Michael Keene. Michael was on the show once before, back when we did a live episode last year on his film The Head at the Sin City Horror Fest, and we had him on after we had a regular Piecing It Together conversation in front of a crowd, and it was a great time, and hopefully you checked that episode out. But now he's on as a regular co-host, and I'm really happy to have him here. So we're going to get into that in a second, but I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together on your podcast app of choice. You can, of course, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser, follow us on social media at PiecingPod, and join the Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. So we'll talk to you a little more after the conversation about some of the stuff that's going on with the show and everything, but for now, let's jump into this conversation about Verotika. All right, so joining us today, we've got filmmaker Michael Keene. How's it going, Michael?
Oh, it is certainly going. I think that is a way to put it. It is going. I'm having a good time. It's, I'm under quarantine. I'm watching a lot of movies.
Yeah.
Some of those movies are amazing, pieces of true art that I will never forget, and others are Verotika.
Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if we're going to find out whether this is a piece of art during this conversation, but I guess we're getting right to it, huh?
It is art just by virtue of being a moving picture.
Yes.
So
it checks those boxes at least.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, it's your first time actually co-hosting an episode. For people listening, Michael is the filmmaker whose film The Head we covered on our live episode last year, and then he joined us at the end of the conversation to get some thoughts and feedback from him. But since it's your first time co-hosting an episode, why don't you tell people a little about yourself and what you do?
Well, I am a filmmaker in quotation marks. I have made 2 films so far. Hopefully, I'll eventually get to 3 once the world stops being in apocalypse mode.
Sure.
But I made Fatal Future, which is kind of a tribute to Neil Breen and other so-called bad filmmakers out there. Which a lot of people have mistaken for just another bad movie, which it may or may not be. I don't know.
Sure.
And then I also directed The Head, which of course you covered already on this show, and that's kind of my, if I die tomorrow, it's my masterpiece. But it is a shot on VHS tribute to, shot on VHS horror movies about a mannequin head that drinks blood and the man that loves her. And that's kind of my thing. I also have a YouTube channel where I just talk about movies that most people don't give a fuck about. I did a whole video recently about Let My Puppets Come, the puppet porno. And I actually just yesterday got a big old shipment of Vinegar Syndrome pornos in for future videos about that sort of 70s and 80s porno industry. Don't expect any tributes to those as far as my actual films go, just because various reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just a low end filmmaker. Just another one of those guys.
Another one of them. Well, I think that this is going to be a fun conversation. I know this movie, Verotika, Glenn Danzig's, is his directorial debut, I believe, other than maybe some video stuff.
Yeah, this is his first feature film. But
Yeah.
not his last. He's already finished his vampire spaghetti western, which I looked up an article, and I don't remember all the names, but one of the names was Julian Sands. So it's going to be, we got a good decade of quality Danzig, I think,
Oh
coming
boy.
up.
Yeah, the next era of cinema. Yeah, this should be a lot of fun. And I know you, like, with the background of film that you have and the stuff that you love, are probably going to have some really interesting puzzle pieces to go with this one. I think let's jump right in. What do you got for your first puzzle piece for Verotika?
So this one, I feel like you probably have this one too. Eyes Without a Face.
Sure.
Yeah, from 1960. Georges Franju, I think it's the director's name. Anyway, so it is a masterpiece of French horror cinema. 1960, kind of the era in which I think Danzig was kind of aping from, the 60s and the 70s, European horror movies. That's pretty obvious. I did cheat a little bit. I already had this as a puzzle piece, but I was looking at old interviews from last year with Danzig.
They are very, very entertaining, by the way.
He's by the way, I just want to put this out there ahead of the game. Glenn Danzig seems like a legitimately nice, lovely person, who's just like this little muscly nerd who does love these titles.
Right.
I firmly believe him when he brings them up. I do kind of get a bit of a snickering in me whenever he tries to like pronounce the foreign titles. Like he'll say, I don't even know how to say it myself, but like Les Yeux Sans Visage. He could just say with Eyes Without a Face. We all know what it is.
Sure.
And he treats it like it's this like super obscure film that no one has heard of, and almost every horror fan who's like worth their salt has at least knows what Eyes Without a Face is,
sure,
or has seen it. I mean, I think it was one of my first Criterion DVDs I ever owned, back in the day, and you know, it's a major piece of filmmaking, and he certainly took it very literally in his inspiration for this film. The entire second segment, of course, apes Eyes Without a Face.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think also that's something, most people listening should have already watched the movie. Obviously, we're getting into lots of spoilers in this. But for those who haven't watched it yet, it is a series of vignettes stitched together, and each one kind of has a different kind of horror influence. So I'm sure a lot of our puzzle pieces are going to, be wide ranging because of the different vignettes having different influences. But the Eyes Without a Face one is... yeah, 100%. Like, just that's what he's doing.
Yeah. I'll give him this. It's the only one that I 100% was like, yes, that is the exact influence. The other two, the third film or the third short, I don't really watch a lot of the Bathory type movies. There's a lot of Bathory movies out there. I just don't care that much about those types of movies. I do have one for that later, but. This is the one where I was like, yes, Eyes Without a Face. The first time I watched it, I was like, okay, well, obviously he really likes that. And it's also worth noting that all of these are directly based on comics from his Verotic line of comic books. And so I don't know, this would have been sometime in the mid-90s, I guess, that whatever this, I don't know, I don't remember what this segment was called, but he already, I mean, just pillaged all these influences, and I feel like he hasn't actually watched a movie since.
That's funny. Yeah, just used it all, made up the comic, and then it's just been like, I don't know, just coasting since then.
Yeah.
Just waiting for his chance to make this epic. All right, I'll go with another piece here. I've got a few that have to do with the whole... neckbreaker character. So I will start with the Wishmaster series. The whole the Jin, I believe is how you pronounce that particular kind of character, a Jin.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and take that off my list.
Okay, cool. I'm sure we'll have some overlap around here. But yeah, that character. Totally reminded me of that just total over the top scenery chewing, just going for it kind of a character with the big accent and the big facial maneuvers with every single line delivery. And it's a fun character. It's completely ridiculous, and fun is a weird word for a spider demon that wants to rape people, but yeah, in the ass specifically. That's what we got here with this movie, Verotika.
Yeah. I as I said, I had Wishmaster. What's interesting, I actually did some research just a few minutes ago while I was, kind of prepping.
Mm-hmm.
So as I said, all of these are based on comic books. So Albino Spider of Dejette, the comic book actually
Mm-hmm.
came out first in 1997 or 1998. I can't quite. I believe it's 1997 because there's like a few different. I think it's number 1 came out in 97, and there's like a number 0 comic that came out. I don't know. It's a whole bunch of dates, but it looks like 1997 it came out. Same year as Robert Kurtzman's Wishmaster. Odd. I'm just gonna say it. Just gonna put it out there. Odd.
Wow, it must have been in the ether or something
Yeah.
at that moment, huh?
Yeah, I'm honestly surprised we don't have like Robert Englund, Andrew Divoff, Tony Todd cameos and all that stuff in this film. Actually, I'm not surprised because they wouldn't be caught dead near this movie.
Exactly. They did not return phone calls. That's what it comes down to. All right, what do you got for your next piece?
So this next one, I don't think that Glenn Danzig's actually seen this movie. But I see it as a puzzle piece because it's the same concept for the creation of the film, except done poorly, and that's Sin City. So I remember where one of the Glenn Danzig interviews, he actually, no, it wasn't an interview. It was another podcast. I'm sorry, I'm cheating on you. There was a podcast that covered Verotika called Astro Radio Z, and one of the guys actually went out and bought the Verotika comics and spent way too much money. And apparently they are 1-to-1 recreations of the comic books, or the movies, the 1-to-1 recreation of the comic books, which explains why, like, a lot of the geography. My brain is gone after watching this twice.
I'm sure.
But a lot of the geography in the film doesn't make any sense. There's, in the first segment, the young woman's boobai,
Yes.
her tits that are staring at people, cries, and so a little tear drops from the tit eye, and it lands on a spider that is across the room on top of a vase on a table. Zero sense is made.
No.
And I think it's just because he was so dedicated to making this a 1-to-1 of the comics that he wrote.
So it's just the panels in the comic book, but those don't necessarily line up in a real way.
Yeah, because I mean, when you're creating a set, when you're designing cinematography, it's not going to be a 1-to-1. Sin City, of course, famously is about as close to a 1-to-1 adaptation as you can get for a comic book, except it works really well and is actually a pretty fucking good movie. And a part of that is, when you're adapting material, you can be really, really faithful, but you have to make adjustments based on what you have. Obviously,
Sure.
Sin City almost entirely shot on green screen. That helps a lot. But I remember reading the comics and watching the movie and saying, okay, well, there's these little differences to make it work, but the aesthetic is still there, and the overall visual appeal is still there. And I don't think Glenn realizes that. I think that he's the type of person to take the idea of being faithful way too far.
Sure.
Which I get. I understand that. Fatal Future is a slow-moving, poorly paced film because it's based on poorly paced films. And I will always regret that to some degree. So I get it. I understand. But holy shit, he is way too faithful to his own material.
Right.
And I think part of that is also no one was really there to tell Glenn no. Based on the interview I read with some music blog or whatever, he, I guess, didn't want anybody telling him what to do during this movie. He didn't want any executives to, big Hollywood types to tell him he's wrong.
That does not surprise me one bit.
And here's the thing, Glenn, you need those. Like I would not say that The Head is a particularly great film, but the reason it's as good as it is and as fun as it is I had several people around me all the time who were saying, maybe you want to not do that. And that's important. It doesn't mean you always have to listen to them, but you should take that influence. I mean,
Right.
George Lucas famously did not take any influence for the prequels, and that was a painful experience for all of us.
Right.
So Sin City.
There you go. No, I like that. It's a great puzzle piece, and it makes me wonder. I just looked up the budget for Sin City was $40 million. I wonder what Verotika looks like with $40 million budget. I wonder. Still Glenn Danzig, but a $40 million budget.
I would like to think that it would be better.
Yeah, possibly. So I'll go with another piece. This kind of speaks to the character design. We of course have that the woman with the eyes for nipples. We have the neck breaker. We have a lot of other crazy characters. I thought of Mortal Kombat. Just these kind of ridiculous characters that seem like they are maybe created like by a 14-year-old boy or something like that, and just totally ridiculous, and using all these kind of genre influences and mythical influences and stuff like that, and horror stuff to combine into some just really silly but fun creature design kind of things. And also another point is I love that the spider has his own VFX credit in the opening credits, which was pretty fun.
It's the worst. It's the worst. God damn it.
So yeah, just that kind of just ridiculous, totally silly character design element just reminded me of Mortal Kombat characters.
Yeah. I didn't think of Mortal Kombat. But I will actually immediately follow up with a similar film as far as like character design and influence that I only thought of when you were leading up to Mortal Kombat. I thought you were going to use this. Heavy Metal.
Sure.
I feel like that because I know that Glenn does not like modern movies. He has said as much. He thinks that they're all trash. He thinks that no good horror is made anymore. Which, Glenn, you need to get a Shudder subscription.
Yeah, it's free for 30 days right now during the shutdown.
Yeah, just take it all in, Glenn, because you're very wrong. But Heavy Metal is another one. It's also an anthology film based on comics made for adults, and has very little narrative, which I think is a big thing here. I think that there is almost zero narrative on display. Albino Spider of Djet is easily the most narrative driven, and it's still like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And Heavy Metal works because there's so many vignettes. I don't even remember how many, but it seems like they go in fairly rapid succession in that film with very little, there's definitely, they lead somewhere, but they don't have like narratives that pop in your mind. Like I can't even remember, there's like the taxi cab driver who kills the chick when she turns on him after a bit of a noirish escapade or whatever.
Sure.
That's all I can really think of. And
yeah, I haven't seen it since high school, and I can't remember any individual pieces either of that movie.
Yeah, it's all just like a smorgasbord of heavy metal covers, really.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's maybe what Glenn wanted with this movie. Like now that I don't know why I didn't think about this before when I was putting together my pieces, but there's a very big heavy metal influence. And I'm sure if you brought it up in an interview, he'd be like, "Fuck yeah, man, heavy metal."
Yeah.
'Cause that's how Glenn Danzig talks.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a great piece, and I'm surprised I didn't think of that either, because it totally. I mean, this movie does have so much of that, so much, rock album cover, feel to it, and that's such a heavy metal thing as well. So it totally fits in there.
And yet, shockingly, not a very rock and roll movie.
No, not really. I mean, it's clear. You know what? I might as well. I was going to mention this later in the conversation, but uh, I might as well just jump into this one. I was going to say, just in general, French cinema. You already brought up Eyes Without a Face, but just the idea that he had all of his actors apparently take voice coaches for French accents, and clearly he just has some idea of like this elevated kind of thing, like that it was going to be this classy thing where everyone has these accents and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I think that there's some maybe delusion of grandeur there a little bit, but just to think that this fits in with like a French cinema kind of a feel or something like that.
Yeah. I actually have, let's see, I think I have two more French movies on my, well, one and a half French movies
Yeah.
on my
Okay.
list. Yeah, he loves European horror. I'll give him that. He definitely loves European horror movies. I don't know that he really gets them in particular, but he definitely French and Italian are it looks like are his two biggest influences.
Sure.
And actually, my next puzzle piece is Blood and Black Lace,
Hmm.
which is Mario Bava movie from the late '60s, I think '68.
Hmm.
And Blood and Black Lace is probably the one that I see the most visually. And it doesn't actually have to be Blood and Black Lace. It could be a whole menagerie of Mario Bava movies, but that's the one that I think really kind of changed the landscape. I think it's well known as like the first real giallo film. It's either that or Evil Eye,
Hmm.
and it's a lot of harsh, um, bright colors, a lot of primary colors, just very heavy blue, red, pink, whatever. It's very stylish, and I think that I get the feeling that Danzig saw movies like that, like Blood and Black Lace, and he took that basic color palette and said, "Okay, I like primary colors now."
Right.
But
Right.
he didn't consider why they're being used. He didn't consider how the camera is being used in the same scene. I know he went to the like New York Institute for Photography or whatever for college. I'm shocked by that, frankly. And I don't. I really I hate being mean, but he just
Right. Yeah.
doesn't seem to understand how the camera works. He knows that these visuals exist, these flourishes. There's several split diopter shots, which I'm not even sure he had a diopter for this. It might just be a composite, but there's several
Right.
split diopter shots throughout the film, and a lot of colorful lighting. But I actually rewatched Blood and Black Lace last night, while under the influence of drugs, and like there's all these amazing dolly shots which Mario Bava got by using like a child's uh, pushy cart thing. I don't know why I can't think of wagon,
Sure.
child's wagon, and they just look like amazing dolly shots that are really pushing the story forward and making the most out of the space that he's utilizing.
Hmm.
Blood and Black Lace being a famously very cheap film, despite looking gorgeous, and you see what Glenn Danzig, who has the benefit of digital technology, uh, and living in L.A. surrounded by rental houses, and he couldn't really be bothered to do any like really nice dolly shots or anything. I'm sure that I feel like there are some tracking shots. Maybe I don't
Right. There's
remember
got to
any.
be at least one or
Yeah, I
something.
feel
But
like the camera moved a bit during like the strip club scenes, maybe.
oh, that is where you would put the extra effort in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'd think. But yeah, he movies like Mario Bava's Blood and Black Lace, he just seemed to take the basics and ignore the nuance.
Right, right. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I've never actually seen Blood and Black Lace, but I mean, what you're saying though makes total
It's
sense.
great.
I before I move on to my next piece, I think just talking about some of that technical stuff, there's a lot of comparisons. If you go to any movie blog, they talk about this like a horror version of Tommy Wiseau's The Room. Do you think as a filmmaker, do you think that Glenn Danzig is more or less technically savvy than Tommy Wiseau making The Room?
Um, That's a weird one. So okay, as far as this movie, if you were just taking the two movies and you ignore any behind the scenes knowledge,
Sure.
I would say in that sense he's worse than
Hmm.
Tommy Wiseau. But when you consider that Danzig did basically everything of note himself, he directed, he produced, he wrote, and he shot. And I know there's two cinematographers credited. I refuse to believe the other cinematographer did any work. I firmly believe that Glenn Danzig did 99.9% of the cinematography in this movie.
Right.
I might be wrong, but that's just the feeling I get. Uh, Tommy Wiseau, if you actually read The Disaster Artist and you kind of get the behind the scenes stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
didn't know dick about filmmaking.
Right.
He knew he wanted to be a director, but he did not have any grasp of the technical aspects. And I guess he's probably gotten better. I haven't watched any of his follow up stuff, but I'm also not the biggest fan of The Room. But
Hmm.
on The Room, he did have a professional crew. He had a professional DP. He had all these professionals helping him.
Right.
And, he was shitty to them and he didn't do, he, squandered all of that professionalism and then made a very profitable movie. So I can't really, say squandered it that bad. But um, I don't see that on this movie. I see someone who did not hire the right people, who did
Right.
not take the time to actually put like money where it needed to go. Um, I'm not like, look, I don't have a very high opinion of myself as a filmmaker. I think I could have at least made this visually appealing while it is
Hmm.
not, or like, you know, done editing to make it reasonably appealing,
Right.
um, or a script revision to, there's all kinds of things to do here that to make it so much better.
Sure.
Um, so it's mixed. I would say that I guess he's more of like and this is a bit on the nose for me, but he's a bit of a more of a Neil Breen, I think.
Hmm.
Almost no budget, as far as I can tell.
Right. Right.
No interest in other people's input, which I know for a fact Neil Breen has a problem with.
Yeah.
Um, and a final product that is questionably entertaining.
That is a very good way to put it. All right, I'll go on to another piece here. I was going to use Orgazmo as a puzzle piece, the Trey Parker, Matt Stone comedy, mainly because of the filling it up with a whole bunch of porn stars as actors
You
in the
really like using
movie.
Orgasmo in these, don't you? You did this for
You know,
Velocipaster.
I did use it for Velocipaster. I've only used it maybe 3 times, but I love that movie.
It's
It's so
great.
good. Yeah, it's so damn good. And I was trying to think if there was a better example of a movie with a bunch of porn stars in it, but that was the one that I kind of just landed on, you know?
Yeah, I would say if I was to go with like something with uh maybe I don't know Caligula.
There you go.
But yeah, it's yeah. There's a lot of porn stars and just like models. Like I know, like Kayden Kross plays Morella, I think is her name,
Hmm.
the host,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and then but like I can't remember all their names, but the girl who plays is her name Dejette? It doesn't matter. Um,
Yeah.
our pink haired protagonist in the first segment,
There you
uh,
go.
she I think is just an actress who happens to have really awkward implants.
Hmm.
I don't think I am 90% certain she's not actually a porn star. I think she's just a model who made some mistakes. Nothing against her. She seems nice. I'm just,
Yes.
she has made her chances of starring in the next big drama relatively low. Uh,
Right.
but yeah, Orgasmo, yeah, that works. I can think of a lot of porn, but I can't think of any films that Danzig would have watched that starred porn actors but were not porn. That's tough.
Right. Yeah. Just to think like, oh yeah, I'm gonna hire as many porn actors that I can, get in touch with or
Yeah, which is
whatever.
such a weird like methodology too. Like
Sure.
you again filming in LA, you have a who's who of young actors to choose from who have plenty of talent that would be happy to be in your movie. You know, it's a movie from the singer from the Misfits. Fuck yeah,
Yeah,
sign me
hell
up.
yeah.
This is my big break. Awesome. But instead, you just get a bunch of porn stars and models who can't act. What the fuck is why?
And then make them learn a French accent on
Learn
top
is
of that.
strong, but yeah, it's such an odd choice. uh,
Man. All right, what do you got for your next piece?
this one's a bit of a cheat. I actually, this is the only one that I added to my list after listening to Glenn Danzig talk, and I was
Mhm.
uncertain if I was going to add it, and then I watched it, and I knew I had to talk about it, and I feel like a fucking rube for never seeing this before. It like all my horror like art film cred is immediately tossed out the window. But I watched Spirits of the Dead,
Hmm.
and specifically the segment "Toby Dammit" by Federico Fellini. Spirits of the Dead itself is an Edgar Allan Poe trilogy of stories. Fuck, I forgot his name, but the director of Barbarella did a segment with Jane Fonda, of course, same year, '68, and Louis Malle directed the middle segment, and then Federico Fellini brought up the rear with the best of the bunch. Honestly, like the first two are kind of fine to good, and
Hmm.
then Toby Dammit is one of the best horror shorts I've ever seen. It is extremely vibrant. It like when I first started, because he had said Spirits of the Dead. He should have said Toby Dammit, because I would have saved so much of my own fucking time. Because the first two segments, I was like, how did this influence? Like, I can kind of see the first segment influencing the third segment of his film, kind of, but I just couldn't see it. And then finally, Toby Dammit comes on, and it's a totally different movie. Starts off in this like beautifully, I don't know if it's a set or a real airport, but it starts in this airport, and there's like all this weird, like there's some like weird technology going on. There's all these cardboard cutouts of people in the background that are really eerie, and you have Terrence Stamp just looking like a fucking zombie walking through, drugged out of his mind. There's this sunlight just pouring through the windows, like unnatural amounts of just bright orange sunlight, and you're just in for a fucking ride the whole way through. And it's gorgeous to look at. It's the exact opposite of this movie, and but I can see again the vibrant colors. I can see the kind of like there's not a lot of story to Toby Dammit. It's really just you're following Terrence Stamp through like in a word show and like talking to these producers and driving around in a brand new car, and then it has its twist ending, and that's it. And it's very, it's like 40 minutes long. Not a whole lot happens, but it is visually very arresting, which
Hmm.
I feel like Danzig was kind of banking on this being so visually arresting and having so much what the fuckery that
Right.
you were entranced like you might be. But the thing is, Federico Fellini, I don't know if you know this, kind of a master of cinema. A little bit of a master of cinema. And even though, again, not a whole lot happens, every minute you're just like strung along, like this is fucking great. Whereas with um, Verotika, it honestly just kind of feels like you have like one good 3 minute set piece that's worth talking about at least, and then it goes for like 5 to 10 minutes with nothing happening. And that's not good when you have three stories that are all just 30 minutes long.
Right.
And then kind of a part two to Spirits of the Dead being an influence. It's three stories, as I said. And I have this sneaking suspicion. So in Verotika, these stories have almost no real substance to speak of. They are
Hmm.
very like short stories that are in turn expanded to 30 minutes. And I think that Glenn Danzig loved Spirits of the Dead, specifically loved Toby Dammit. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure he doesn't give a fuck about the other two, but he
Right.
cites the whole movie as an influence. And I think that he thought, and this kind of goes back to the Sin City puzzle piece, that he needed to be as exact in his influences as possible. And so he said, well, my anthology, my super artistic pseudo-European horror anthology needs to also be 3 segments long. No more,
Mhm.
no less.
Right.
Because this really does feel like something that should be like maybe 6 segments long, but same runtime,
Mhm.
and it's not.
Right.
It's just kind of, elongated for no good reason. So Spirits of the Dead, highly recommend Toby Dammit. It's on Criterion, the Criterion channel right now. You can just watch it by itself or with Spirits of the Dead. Phenomenal movie.
Sweet. Yeah, I think a lot of that kind of points to something that we've been kind of talking about this whole time, that it seems like his idea is get an idea and get a specific aesthetic, and maybe everything else will work out
Yeah,
if we
this
start
should be
rolling.
fine. This should be.
Yeah.
I mean, how hard could it be?
Yeah.
Fellini could do it. I can do it. Come on.
Exactly.
My name is Glenn Danzig. This is how I talk now.
I love the idea of this actually working out, and then we get a list of the great directors: Fellini, Glenn Danzig. Oh man! All right, I only have a couple more, but I'll go first up. We kind of touched on it earlier briefly, but the Elizabeth Bathory story. I just figured I'd use The Countess as an example of a film that inspired that whole segment of the girl killing young girls to stay young with their blood and all that kind of stuff. There's obviously a lot of movies inspired by that story, a lot of different movies that we could use. I don't know, did you have any other ones in mind?
I put Daughters of Darkness, but it's kind of
Okay.
just a catch-all for any Jean Rollin film. He had that whole, I think Rape of the Vampire is one of them. I'm not a
Mhm.
big Jean Rollin fan. I don't dislike his movies, but they're not like super appealing to me. But they're all just like lesbian vampires. What you gonna do? Will this one have pornography in it? I don't know. Watch to find out. Um, and it seemed like he had a hefty. I'm pretty sure. Again, you bring up Jean Rollin in an interview, and Glenn Danzig will just go on for minutes at a time,
Sure.
describing all the ways his film is just like a Jean Rollin film. Which, you know what?
Totally.
Both have pacing issues.
Yeah, that's a that's a good shared trait to cite there.
Yeah.
Oh man! All right, what do you got for your next piece?
Let's see. I have a couple actually. I have a let's go with this is again kind of a catch-all, but House of 1000 Corpses.
Mhm.
I think that Glenn Danzig, I know that he was at the premiere for Three from Hell, so I know he must be some sort of Rob Zombie fan.
Mhm.
And Rob Zombie is similar, um, not that similar, but similar to Glenn Danzig in that he is a rocker who made the transition to filmmaking. I think Rob Zombie did a better job of it, but
Sure.
he, wears his influences on his sleeve, and his movies are kind of a hodgepodge of everything that kind of inspired him, as well as his kind of rocker aesthetic. Of course, his being kind of a rockabilly feel. So he has all those redneck characters and everything. And I feel like you look at an old Misfits music video and you see like Frankenstein and other classic movies being spliced in to their
Mhm.
videos. And I think that Danzig is kind of the shitty Rob Zombie in that way. Uh,
Yeah, exactly. Or the other way around. Rob Zombie is Danzig listening to some studio notes, maybe.
Yeah, I think that Rob Zombie is one of those guys who legitimately understands what makes these movies work.
Yeah.
Sometimes he doesn't apply them as well to his own, but he definitely, loves cinema. I know there's
Sure.
a good chunk of time when he wanted to do a Marx Brothers movie, and that fell apart at some point. Um,
Mhm.
and he, I think he is someone who kind of has the chops already to make a movie. He kind of like, I don't know, there's just like something about certain people where they just automatically are reasonably good at making movies. I think part of that is definitely the listening to criticism and being able to work with other people.
Mhm.
Danzig seems like the kind of guy who, while again very nice, isn't great at working with others. And I think you need that. But yeah, that's really my only. Also, I guess, Rob Zombie likes to fuck with people, and Glenn Danzig thinks that he's fucking with people.
That's interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. So I'll go with my last piece, which I was just going to combine. I mean, this is pretty basic here, but just the whole anthology horror thing. I just thought of Creepshow and Tales from the Crypt as other examples of that. But I mean, just using that whole kind of setup with little horror stories. Then of course the girl is kind of like a female crypt keeper kind of character that leads us through these stories, who's just totally hamming it up and all of that. So yeah, I mean, just those two. Obviously, there's been a bunch of other horror anthologies throughout this conversation, and there's been plenty of them over the years, especially in kind of lower budget horror things. There's, I know it's a pretty, well used, concept to do horror anthologies. So I just picked those two as examples.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. He loves his comic anthologies. That's for sure. And
Yeah.
I'll give him this. Like I've only seen like a little bit of the artwork for the comics that he wrote.
Mm-hmm.
They're interesting. Like I'm actually staring because I just have this page open, the cover for Albino Spider of Djet #1, and it looks like in Ninja Scrolls where the big dude is like just straight up raping I don't remember any of the characters' names, but in the early in Ninja Scroll there's the character that gets raped, and there's like the guy's just like huge and has like these massive hands that are just like covering her entire body, and it looks
Right.
like that, but a spider demon on the
Mm.
cover. And it's interesting in sort of that, like, how like Rob Liefeld art is kind of, it's wrong, but it's interesting. It has some artistic quality because of how wrong it is, and that's kind
Sure.
of what I get from this artwork. And so, I think that there's a style there that's ready to come out, and I think that the comics seem dumb as shit, but I don't mind that as long as you're making something interesting. And Verotika is interesting. I only have a few. I'll just like rapid fire a few puzzle pieces for you.
Perfect.
Let's see. I have Suspiria, which kind of goes hand in hand with Blood and Black Lace. Dario Argento, I'm sure, is another one of those filmmakers who he loves immensely. And actually, come to think of it, there's a lot of Argento movies that are very exploitative of the female body. That, like, I almost feel like is it Mother of Tears? I feel like Mother of Tears might have been this has like a Mother of Tears vibe where it almost like looks like a porno, and is not, it's not quite what it is meant to be, if only because the director was a little too late to get in on it. So I'd add Mother of Tears and Suspiria. Pieces. I don't know if everyone's ever used Pieces on your show before, but
I don't believe so.
Yeah.
No, I don't know that film.
Okay,
Actually.
Pieces is 1982. It's the director of Slugs. Wait, is it Slugs? Fuck, I'm the worst when it comes to remembering anything. Yeah, Slugs. Juan Picar Simon, Spanish film set in Boston, oddly enough, and it's about this killer who's running around a college campus killing people, and is like chainsawing a lot of them to death, and it's aggressively gory, like outrageously gory, more than it needs to be, and it's beautiful to watch, but it's really fucking stupid, and it kind of ends on a what the fuckery that I feel like Glenn Danzig had to have really appreciated. It's also, again, 80s. He seems to, past like 92, just like does not give a fuck about any movies for whatever reason. He's a gatekeeper, damn it.
Yeah,
And
sure.
so I would say that Peace is probably an influence, if only because it's so outlandish. and has tits and blood, which are his two favorite things, I guess.
The detectives, that's like there's kind of like a detective thing going on in there, right?
Yeah. And actually,
I was
yeah,
gonna
the
say
detectives are there is a direct parallel to Pieces with the detectives. There are characters much like those in Pieces. So that actually would work really well.
Yeah, and I was gonna say those are some of the most just straightforward, funny moments
Yeah.
of this movie. Like if people are going into Verotika for laughs because they heard the whole, the room comparison or whatever, some of it is as ridiculous funny as you've heard. Some of it is just kind of like this is awful. But all of the detective scenes are just hilarious. So many ridiculous, funny lines in there.
Yeah, I got a good kick out of those. Those were a good reprieve from all the fucking stripping.
Yeah.
And then the only other piece I have on my little list is Howling 2. That kind of ties into the third segment. I imagine have you seen Howling 2?
I feel like it's probably one of those movies I rented back in high school, but I haven't seen it since then, if anything.
It has probably the best subtitle of all time. Howling 2, Sturba, Werewolf Bitch. It's one of my favorite titles of all time. But it has this great theme song by some band called Babel that I could never find. And it's at the end, so it's got shit, what's her name? Sybil Danning. Sybil Danning, well known for having a good pair of tits on her, as Lynn Danzig probably has said at some point. So Sybil Danning in this, she plays Sturba, the titular werewolf bitch, and she at one point just strips her entire top off and just big old set of titties just plummets out, and she's very campy and fun, but she has kind of that vibe of our Bathory-esque character in the third segment, including like her robe thing and crown are very similar to what Sybil Danning would wear in Howling 2. And once the credits roll, you get this montage of a bunch of scenes from the movie set to this Howling theme song, and a big part of it is they just keep taking that like maybe at best 2-second clip of her shirt being pulled off, and they just keep showing it. So it is throughout the song, and I think because the director Philippe Mora, I guess just like, or maybe the producers were just like, we got her to do it once, we got to use it as many times as possible. We got to get our money's worth out of Sybil Danning's titties, and so it just keeps stripping off and off and off while the song's playing. And when I was watching this movie, I was like, man, I bet Glenn Danzig watched the credits to Howling 2 a lot. So I'm pretty sure there's a heavy influence there.
So ridiculous. That's great. Oh, man. All right. I'm going to go ahead and list down the finished puzzle, and then we'll get into any closing thoughts. Finished puzzle for Verotika includes Eyes Without a Face, of course, Wishmaster, Sin City, Mortal Kombat, heavy metal, French cinema in general, Blood and Black Lace, Orgazmo, Spirits of the Dead, The Countess, Daughters of Darkness, House of a Thousand Corpses, Creepshow, Tales from the Crypt, Suspiria, Mother of Tears, Pieces, and Howling 2. So we got a nice list of
much better movies. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. That's the way to put it. Any closing thoughts on this one?
I've shit on Danzig's film a lot during this podcast. And it's so weird. I love So Bad They're Good, quote unquote, movies. And most of the time I come out of them with like an appreciation for the director and some sort of respect. And I don't really take them as, oh, these suck. It's more, these are entertaining for a different reason. And this is one of those where it's legitimately just kind of a bad movie. But what I appreciate, and the reason I would suggest people actually go ahead and purchase it, Glenn Danzig does seem like a legitimately nice person, and I'm very curious to see what else he creates. So it's nice to support filmmakers like that. But also, it gives the viewer a lot of time to kind of take in the shitty, like fun, shitty moments.
Mm-hmm.
And it's honestly like a really good party movie.
Yeah.
Because the biggest problem with movies like, say, The Room, I guess, is that there's so many things happening that are like meme worthy, I guess, that you tend to miss a few of them because everybody's like talking over it and making their quips. And the beauty of Verotika is that you have like a good 5 minutes between each moment that you want to talk about and you want to shit on. And there's something kind of nice about that. You know, it's the slow burn of party movies. I don't really recommend watching it by yourself. It definitely got exponentially better when I was kind of live tweeting it, and my wife was in the room, so we were kind of talking about it.
Sure.
And that helps immensely. I think if you had a group of like 6 people, maybe, it would be a fucking blast and a half. So I recommend Verotika to people, just on the understanding that it is not a good movie.
Sure.
It is legitimately one of the worst productions I've ever seen. And that includes like Beast of Yucca Flats. Like it's up there with one of the absolute bottom of the barrel worst movies.
Right.
But I want Glenn Danzig to keep making stuff. I cannot wait to watch his vampire spaghetti western.
Mm-hmm.
I hope he learned a bit from this. Probably didn't, but it'd be cool. So overall, just it's an interesting movie.
Yeah. I agree. I if I was to ever watch this again, I did watch it by myself. It would be to watch it with a crowd. I think it could be very fun. Like I said earlier, there are some legitimately funny moments and lines in this, and then there's the so bad it's good funny stuff, and then there's just a lot of bad. But it wasn't. You know, it wasn't the worst thing I've sat through, and I certainly had plenty of laughs, whether they were intentional or unintentional. So I mean, I'd say it's not something that I could really say is all bad. I do think, like you said, like a recommendation, but with a warning that it's not a good movie.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So this is great, Michael. As I always do, I always ask my guests to recommend a movie they've watched recently that our listeners should check out.
This makes you realize I don't think I've ever actually finished your podcast.
Yeah, the end is always the part that I think people, you know, of any podcast where people check out. So
yeah. Let's see. Recently, I've been watching a lot of either Vinegar Syndrome or stuff on Mubi. I recently rewatched In the Cold of the Night, which is available as a Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome, and that's it's 1990. It's kind of a Skinamax type film, and it is legitimately boatloads of fun. And I have a review of that on my YouTube channel that you can check out. On that same YouTube channel, I also have a review of the 70s video nasty classic Island of Death. Highly recommend that film as well. That's streaming on Amazon Prime. And also, I've heard there's this little movie, this little indie film called The Head that is now on Amazon for a very, very low price that people can partake in, and it is apparently a pretty good time.
That is a really good suggestion right there. I agree, and maybe go rent that on Amazon, and then come listen to the live episode from last year. I think it's episode, I don't know the number, but it's on our feed somewhere. Check out the live episode on The Head, because it was a fun talk, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's some sexy voices attached.
There you go. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for doing this. Aside from The Head, where can people find the rest of the stuff that you do?
I'm pretty prolific on Twitter. Just at Michael Keene. Simple. I beat the guitarist or whoever, or the Christian writer to the handle. So at Michael Keene on Twitter. I have a Facebook page, which is, I think it's like at Michael Keene Filmmaker is the shorthand, because I couldn't find anything else that wasn't taken. And then on YouTube, you can find me think it's Photog Torpedo is the like URL, something like that. I'm very good at this sort of promotion thing. And of course, all my movies, you can find out more just by searching Manatee Party. That is our production company. We have another movie that will hopefully come out this year if we can actually start production. But who knows when this quarantine will end.
Sure. Well, in the meantime, at least we can continue reviewing movies and watching them, I guess.
Yeah.
That's always fun too. So, all right, man. Well, thank you so much for doing the show, and maybe we'll get you back one of these days. It was a fun time.
Yeah, you fucking better.
We're queer.
We're geeks.
We're
queeks. Superheroes, Star Wars,
Broadway, Drag Race.
So if you're super gay,
super nerdy,
or anything in between, listen to Queeks today.
Wherever fine podcasts are sold.
And find us on Instagram at Queeks Podcast.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Michael Keene about Verotika. It was a fun one, I gotta say that. But yeah, that is a crazy movie. If you haven't seen it, I think it's worth a watch, especially if you're into, the so bad it's good kind of a thing where it's just absolutely insane and you just have no idea what the hell you're watching. It can be a lot of fun. So obviously the show has been very different the last few weeks. We missed a week here. We did a whole bunch of episodes one week, and we started the Missing Pieces series just this past Monday. We have a bunch of those planned on recording, and I just want to say, if you're out there listening and you would like to join me for one of those, do get in touch, because I'm planning on recording a lot of them in the coming weeks, and of course still trying to cover as many new movies as we can. There's not going to be many in the theater, if any. Well, none. I mean, what am I talking about? There's going to be none in the theater because the theaters are all closed. But the ones that would be theatrical releases are going to maybe continue to come home for $20 a rental, which maybe we'll do some of those. We'll see what happens. But there's also VOD movies, there's Netflix movies, all that kind of stuff. So we'll try to cover as much of those new release movies that we can watch at home as we can, and we'll try to do Missing Pieces. We'll try to do maybe some Breaking It Aparts, and maybe some other new special series that I maybe have planned that I'm maybe going to try to get started here soon. So lots of new content coming to this podcast while we're locked in our homes and trying to survive and not die from an airborne virus that's threatened to kill half of the planet. But let's continue just having fun and talking about movies as much as we can. You can rate and review us over on Apple Podcasts, on Podchaser. You can subscribe to Piecing It Together on pretty much any podcast app. You can also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join the Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. And you can even go to our Patreon and give us a little support there. We're going to try to make as much new content for you over there as we can. So, throw a few bucks that way, and we'll make even more new content for you. So, speaking of new content, I also have a new album out. It is called Beater, the original motion picture soundtrack. It features the score to a feature film that I recently composed the music for, and that film is coming out later this year. But the album also features the music from 6 short films I did with the same director, Chris Johnson, and it is an hour and 45 minutes of music. The album is available for sale on all the digital music services like iTunes and Amazon and CD Baby and all that stuff. It's also available to just stream on Spotify and Google Play Music, all that kind of stuff too. So I do encourage you to go check that out. But I'm going to play a track from that now, as I'm probably going to do for the next bunch of episodes in a row. So what track should I play for this one? There's a couple heavy tracks on there. I should probably play one of those to go along with this Verotika thing. I think I'm going to go with this track called Violence Begets Violence. This is actually from the film Beater. It's a pretty heavy track from one of the big dramatic moments of the film, and I think it's a good one. It fits this a little bit. Since I played all of my more metalish tracks already on the show many times over. There's no need to go back to those tracks like Burnout and Scarecrow. You can go look those ones up. They're available to stream or buy wherever you listen to music. But let's play Violence Begets Violence. This is from the new album Beater, and enjoy it. And we'll be back with more Piecing It Together next week.
and all points west.